How's it going, everybody? I'm Lewis and we've got a new developer blog from the Old School RuneScape team. This is Lootshare 2. Now you might be asking, if you've been watching my videos, where is Lootshare developer blog? Now I've been rather busy recently and I had a look at the Lootshare developer blog and the Lootshare 2 developer blog. There's lots of points that were shared, so I thought I'd just get all of it done in this video. So the first Lootshare developer blog was really to gather the thoughts from the community about the system. Obviously, with Lootshare being such a huge system, they saw a lot of feedback from that developer blog, and they want to expand the idea of what Lootshare can be. So let's start this off by asking, what is Lootshare? For those who have never encountered Lootshare in the past, the system aims to share out loot evenly across a PvM team. This means that the player that does the most damage doesn't simply get the drop. Instead, it will choose someone from the team based on their Lootshare potential. This sort of system is particularly crucial when a boss becomes more complex and you're not just completely fighting it, maybe you're doing things to the environment to help kill it, and other such activities to help the group. A benefit having this sort of system means that as a player progresses fighting a boss, they'll gain Lootshare potential. If they get a drop, that value will be taken away from their Lootshare potential, and in the end, the value of all drops that a team will get will be spread across the team nice and evenly. That means that if you missed one of the drops just before, you're more likely to get the next drop. Now when it comes to implementing Lootshare, they've got various different ideas of how they could do that. They could go for the original system. However, this was designed to be unpredictable, because they didn't want real-world trading to be taking place around that sort of time. Which, in a way, is an alright system. It can spread out the loot. However, because they were trying to give it behaviour that we couldn't predict, it's kind of very random and isn't particularly completely fair. So what other alternative systems could we have? A simple solution would just be to take into the account your Lootshare potential of the entire team, make a ratio from all of these, and then give it to the highest Lootshare potential. They could introduce a completely different element, such as taking into account every player's damage dealt, and using them to make a random choice on who should receive the drop. Or even offering complete randomization. One issue they've always had in the past was that Lootshare wasn't very visible about who's going to get a drop. They're open to the idea of displaying a lot more information about your Lootshare potential. However, if they do this, there are a couple of concerns. If your Lootshare potential or rank is visible, players may choose just to leave the room, join new teams, until they find a group of players which their own Lootshare potential is superior. Effectively meaning they're going to try and get the best chance of getting that drop. And players may also feel a little bit aggravated if they have the best Lootshare potential but don't receive the best drop. For example, the Elysian Sigil drop. Additionally, the original Lootshare system had a decaying system. The value of your Lootshare potential would drop down 10% each day. This may become an issue on bosses where a drop is so rare that going days or weeks without seeing a drop means that if your Lootshare potential is going down, it's completely reducing your chance of getting it. And this will mean that players will be discouraged from actually playing non-stop to get the drop. One thing that they did in RuneScape 3 was introduce Lootshare worlds. These were just worlds that Lootshare could be used on. This means that normal players, potentially solo players, could just go in on their own and avoid having a team coming in and stealing their drop. Based on what happened in RuneScape 3, Lootshare worlds are very popular. However, there was a lot more requests for Lootshare worlds, and because of this sort of distribution of players between the Lootshare worlds and the non-Lootshare worlds, certain players and certain teams would struggle to find an empty boss room. So in reality they would like to get as many of the worlds as they can Lootshare worlds. Finally, another system that has a similar overtone and has worked in RuneScape 3 is Coinshare. Of course this will start some kind of debate because it's such a huge impact on the economy. At this moment in time, Jagex don't actually want to offer it to us. Coinshare would instantly give all members of a team an even split of an item's grand exchange price, and the item will go on to the grand exchange for that price. If the item's real value was much lower, however, this offer would never be filled, hence the amount of coins being added to the game grew exponentially, and they never got taken out. However, they do have a solution in mind for having a Coinshare system that doesn't cause large amounts of gold to come into the economy, but it will take a lot of substantial game engine development time, so they'll choose to offer that in the future if there is sufficient interest. Now a lot of this information I've got has come from the first Lootshare developer blog that they released. Since then, they've stated that if it's voted into Old School, about 60% of the Old School worlds would have Lootshare available. As a whole, they want to get the items distributed in a much more balanced way than they originally were in the original system. And unlike the original system, they don't want to add decay. And they want your Lootshare potential to be visible to you. So at this point you might be thinking, why add Lootshare? One of the big responses to their last Lootshare developer blog was players asking why are they interested in implementing Lootshare, as the system was initially released as a way to combat the trade restrictions but still enjoy PVM. And really, that answer is simple. Just because it was released for that initially doesn't mean it doesn't have other benefits in the game. For example, it removes some of the issues of trust you get. One of the biggest benefits of the system is the fact that if you're in a team of 5 and one of your team gets a 50 mil drop, there's no guarantee that you'll end up receiving a split. For those of you that don't have a group of people to take on bosses, this can be a real problem. Lootshare offers a way to avoid trust being a factor altogether, relying on your Lootshare potential to distribute loot evenly over time rather than relying on your team to split each individual loot means you no longer have to be concerned about whether or not you're going to get a trustworthy team. The system's also very flexible for future expansions. While relying solely on Lootshare is a good solution for some situations, in others you may want to receive a more precise split of the loot as it's dropped. Any system that they would want to make in order to do this would actually require Lootshare as a base. One example of a system they could offer if Lootshare was introduced is Instant Share. If you were to get a signature drop from a boss monster with Instant Share enabled, the item would be instantly sold on the Grand Exchange to the highest existing offer. The coins from this trade will then be evenly split between the team. This system is very similar to Lootshare, but it avoids the concerns of just generating coins. Coins will be coming in straight from the offer and not from an offer that may or may not come in the future. It wouldn't create any economy issues based on money coming into the game. The only potential thing I can see there is that if you get a drop, you might not get the full price that you're expecting. But I suppose the benefit could be that you could get a lot more than you're expecting. Obviously all of this stuff is concept and it's not going to be introduced when Lootshare is. It's a much bigger job than Lootshare, and they want to get Lootshare in the game first in order to even start thinking about this other stuff. As always with Old School RuneScape updates, the most important thing is what us, the players, think. Let the Old School RuneScape team know by going on the forums, maybe Twitter, Reddit, all those great sites where we can contact them. Let them know exactly how you feel about what they've offered, and let them know what they can do to improve it. Depending on how the community is feeling about Lootshare, they may be polling it alongside the top 10 PVM quality of life changes this Thursday. I find this a very interesting developer blog. I think Lootshare is actually quite a nice idea. It helps split up your drops between teams, and people that struggle to find teams don't have to have that trust issue with the players they're with. Personally, I never really used the system in RuneScape 3, and I doubt I'll be using it in Old School RuneScape. But I think I will be voting for it because I'll know it's there, and if I need it, I'll be able to use it. What do you think about Lootshare? Do you like it? Do you dislike it? Do you want a different system like Coinshare? Let me know in the comments below. If you want to watch the latest Old School RuneScape poll, please click here for the top 10 skilling suggestions. And if you want to watch the latest Old School RuneScape update, please click here for necromancy improvements. If you've enjoyed this video, please like and share, and if you want to keep up to date with the Old School RuneScape updates, DevBlogs and polls, please subscribe. I've been Lewis, thanks for watching, goodbye.